this is why you find very often that either ourselves or somebody else, we can sometimes act like we're children, right? When we're triggered, we go into this rage, we go into this temper tantrum, right? When we feel shame, we lash out, we get defensive. So what's really going on is that we're using the mind that was created when we were young children, and we don't have access to what we could say is the adult part of ourselves that is able to say, you know what, just because somebody's upset with me or disappointed in me doesn't mean I'm unlovable.
This is By Joanne Season 2. I'm your host, Joanne Chan, and every Wednesday we bring you inspiring stories, powerful message, and fun conversations with me and my special guests and friends, and it's my personal mission to empower you to live and lead a life with joy. This podcast is for you if you're looking for more joy, courage, passion, and purpose in your life. Now let's dive into today's episode and get ready to laugh, learn, and live your life to the fullest. Joining us today is a psychotherapist, leadership coach, and best-selling author, CEO, and founder of Dethrone Your Inner Critic, a leading personal and professional growth company. Renowned for the M.I.N.D method, she integrates psychology, science, meta-connections, and intention to empower people and organizations globally. Her impactful tools for growth are encapsulated in the #1 best-selling book, Dethroning Your Inner Critic, and the widely followed podcast of the same name, boasting over 116K downloads and on the top 25% of podcasts worldwide. Her influence extends to national platforms like Good Morning America and The Doctors, where she acts as a catalyst for transformation and a guiding light for those who seek purpose and passion in their lives. So, ladies and gentlemen, help me welcoming the M.I.N.D method magician, Joanna Kleinman. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
I am just so excited because we all have negative thinking,
Yes.
we all have self-doubt. No one is perfect. I'm saying this because I don't want my listeners to think that I'm perfect, although I'm a podcaster, a coach, entrepreneur, but I'm not perfect. So I'm so
Right.
glad to have you on the show today to talk how do we conquer our fear, our inner critic, and our self-doubt. So let's talk about your method, the M.I.N.D method, because it's the heart of your work. So can you kind of explain to us or walk us through this method and how it helps
Yeah,
people dethrone their inner critic?
absolutely. So here's the thing. You had said conquering your fear and your doubt and your insecurity. And the reason why I created the M.I.N.D method is because we actually can't conquer it. And most people want to, right? We want to eliminate our fear and eliminate our insecurity. And the reason why we can't is because it's something that is actually hardwired within each and every one of us as human beings. So the M.I.N.D method, and I'll go through the steps in a moment, but the M.I.N.D method is actually something that gives you the opportunity to turn towards your uncomfortable emotions, your shame, your fear, your doubt, your insecurity, and to really get underneath the surface. Okay. So the M step is meet your automatic mind. So we have a mind that just automatically thinks. We don't tell our minds what to think. So just like our bodies breathe for us or our bodies make our heart beat, right? Our minds just go. And what we don't understand is that our minds often go to the same patterns of thoughts and beliefs over and over and over again. And those same thoughts and beliefs trigger emotions, painful emotions sometimes. And those painful emotions cause destructive or self-sabotaging behavior. And those behaviors end up creating certain issues in our life. So maybe, right, our fear and doubt holds us back from really stepping outside of our comfort zone and creating a career, right, that, that would really catapult us to a different level. Or maybe it keeps us from having difficult conversations, with somebody, or it keeps us in a cycle of, not wanting to disappoint or upset somebody, or, pleasing others all the time. And that's how we lose ourselves. So the M step is to start to just observe all of those automatic thoughts and beliefs. Okay. The I step is to investigate the indication signs. Now, I call those the blinking red lights that alert you that your automatic mind has taken over. So those moments when you feel it in the pit of your stomach, or your chest is tight, or you feel that anger surfacing, or that jealousy, or that guilt, or that shame, right? Or you're doing something that takes you outside of your comfort zone and you feel that lack of confidence. These are all indication signs that you are stuck in that automatic mind once again. The N step, which is the really crucial in this whole method, is to neutralize the never-ending message. So if you are in a situation where, let's say you're up on stage and you're about to speak to a large audience, and you're full of a lot of fear, okay? We think, oh, well, I'm afraid because I'm about to go speak to this large audience. But the truth is, if you really lean in, there is a never-ending message, and it's some version of, I'm afraid I'm not good enough. I'm afraid somebody's going to judge me, or somebody's going to criticize me, or somebody's not going to like what I'm saying. And if we look at that as a pattern, we can see that we probably had a version of this when we were 7, and a version when we were 17 years old, and maybe 27, and maybe 37, right? It's just a pattern that we take with us, but we think it's the circumstances that are triggering those emotions. It's always the thoughts and beliefs. It's not the circumstances themselves. The D step is design your life. So when we can actually clearly see our automatic mind, when we can put it right here on the palm of our hand and say, oh, I see you, right? This is just my automatic mind. My automatic mind has been saying the same thing over and over and over again for my whole life, right? These are the same thoughts. These are the same beliefs. This is the same never-ending message. In that moment, we have the opportunity to unhook ourselves from that automatic mind and to consciously and deliberately plug ourselves into very different thoughts about who we really are, which leads us to experiencing very different emotions, which leads us to making very different choices and taking very different actions that have our life going in a very different direction, because it allows us to have difficult conversations. It allows us to take more risks. It allows us to have courage to take action in the face of our discomfort, instead of waiting to get rid of our discomfort before we take actions, because our discomfort is going to be with us for the rest of our lives.
I love that. Thank you so much for explaining the method and walking us through all the steps. Now, before I do have one question for third step, which is neutralizing the never-ending message. But before
Yes.
we go there, I want to dive even deeper into why do we have inner critic, or why do we have self-doubt, or about anything, or about ourselves, right? Basically, so can you explain the psychological, because I know you are a psychotherapist, right?
Yes.
This is
Mhm.
your expertise. So can you explain the psychological
Yeah.
root cause of self-doubt or inner critic? Like where do they come from?
Absolutely. Okay. So it's really biological. All right. So our biology, okay, going all the way back millions of years ago, really, we are we're really hardwired around one thing, and that's survival. Okay. So how did we survive? How have we, been on this planet for as long as we have, is that our brains seek out danger. Okay. And for survival purposes, we're really interested in one thing, and that is seek safety and security and avoid danger. Okay. Now, in our world today, we're not being chased by predators, right? Instead, what happens is the danger that we experience is that first moment where we feel like in some way something's wrong. Now, let me just explain this a little further. Okay. So, when we're like, if you've ever been around a 2-year old, like they'll dance like nobody's watching, they're fully free and self expressed. And around 3 or 4, what happens is this is when we might have our first experience where something is wrong. Now, again, if we're going back to biology, way back, we needed to be valued and accepted by our tribe, or else we died. Okay. So if you're a little boy or a little girl and your parent gets angry at you for, spilling milk, not cleaning up your toys, whatever. Okay. Unfortunately, because we're so little, we may personalize that. We don't understand that if they're, expressing a lot of anger, that has more to do with what's going on with that person than it does with us. But we don't know that when we're young. So we personalize it and we unconsciously make it mean something about ourselves, that in some way we are wrong, we are bad, we are not enough, we are unworthy of love. Now, this is all unconscious. And the moment that that happens for a young child, it's very painful and overwhelming. And so the young child quickly and automatically tries to figure out how I can never feel that pain again, which of course we know is impossible. Okay. But the child doesn't know that. So the child becomes in that moment, right, decides very unconsciously, I'm going to, if I make mommy happy, she'll love me. Right. If I get, really good grades and do everything perfectly, daddy will love me. Right. If I do whatever my brother or sister asks, they'll value me. Okay. So we don't even realize that we're making these choices and decisions when we're young. And that starts to form not just patterns of behavior, but neural connections in our brain that become hardwired. Okay. So this is why you find very often that either ourselves or somebody else, we can sometimes act like we're children, right? When we're triggered, we go into this rage, we go into this temper tantrum, right? When we feel shame, we lash out, we get defensive. So what's really going on is that we're using the mind that was created when we were young children, and we don't have access to what we could say is the adult part of ourselves that is able to say, you know what, just because somebody's upset with me or disappointed in me doesn't mean I'm unlovable. Right? Just because somebody criticizes me or judges me or they think I'm not good enough doesn't mean I'm not good enough. We don't have access to that when we're triggered. And so we spend our lives overcompensating and numbing that pain and shoving it down. And we keep trying to find our value and our worth from other people or from our accomplishments or from other external factors and levels of our life. And this is why you find so many people that they're successful, right? They've made the money, they've gotten the promotion, they've gotten to the top of their career, they have the marriage or the relationship or the kids or whatever, and they're miserable because they've spent their whole lives thinking, well, once I reach these accomplishments, once I've checked these boxes, that's going to make me feel whole and complete and enough and fulfilled. And it doesn't.
Right. I loved everything you just said. It's so true. But I would love to talk to you about triggers. So how do we, so okay, let's say I feel triggered right now. I mean, I'm not right now, but let's say I feel triggered by maybe something that my mom said, right? And she triggered me. So in that moment, how do I untrigger myself?
Okay, so this is a good question. So we need to ask ourselves the question. It's a very simple question. What what is this circumstance making me feel about me? Now, I will say, Joanne, that if your mother says something that upsets you, you may not be able to pause and ask yourself that question and answer that question when you're upset, right? You're upset. You're just in your automatic pattern, your spiral. You're like, oh, she's doing it again. She's making me feel this way, right?
Mm.
But afterwards, right? If you start to get into the practice of every day meeting your automatic mind, that's the M step of the mind method. So actually sitting down with yourself, actually maybe even taking out a journal and asking that question. Oh, okay, I'm so angry and I'm so hurt by what my mother said. And then to ask yourself, what about what she said is triggering me? What is this making me feel? And then you just write. You don't script it. You don't think about it. You just dump your brain onto that paper. You're going to find the never ending message, right? You might write something like, oh, she always makes me feel like she, doesn't like my choices and doesn't like my life. And she always makes me feel this and she always makes me feel that. And you'll start to see that really what that is a hidden part within yourself. That if she might be criticizing your choices, but really the hidden part of yourself is that you are afraid that in some way you're not enough, or right, or there's some part of you that you've been shoving down and operating on top of and trying to prove yourself or strive for the next accomplishment, but that deep down, right, that feeling of being not enough, right, it just kind of keeps lurking underneath the surface. That's how we get to the never ending message, is to use our triggers as the greatest tool for growth and transformation that they are, because they provide a wealth of knowledge and information. And what's really interesting is that those triggers are actually the actual key to our greatest, most authentic life in every aspect of your life,
Mm.
right? If you want better relationships, if you want to feel better about yourself, if you want to reach the next level of your career, if you want to get into, better health, the key lies in being willing to do the deep work to examine your triggers and your pain.
Right. Okay, so how do I neutralize the never ending message? Yes, now I feel triggered. Of course, in the moment, I wouldn't be able to do the work, but maybe at the end of the day, I sit down and pull out my journal and write down all the things that triggered me and what is it, what is this about that's making me feel about myself? And then what? How do I neutralize? I'm sure that thought won't just go away. Like I wake up the next day, I'm a new person, right? So what do I do to neutralize the negative, belief about myself?
Excellent question, right? So in that moment, right, once you've used the M and the I and the N, right, you've identified all the thoughts and beliefs that are running through your mind. You've identified the emotions that it makes you feel and the body sensations that you've had, that right, and you even identify, oh, this is that never-ending message that I've had for forever. Now you start consciously turning your mind towards very different thoughts, like, well, what's some evidence in my life that shows that I am good enough, right? What have I already accomplished? What can I feel proud of myself for?
Mm.
What feedback have I gotten from other people? What have other people said are the reasons that they love me, right? Right, because remember what I said earlier, biologically, we're hardwired to seek out danger. And because of that, we don't actually seek out positive things, right? When positive things happen, right, we might feel good for a second, right? Right? Or maybe more than a second, right? We might feel good for like a day or a week, but pretty soon we're back to trying to prevent or ward off the circumstances in our life that bring us back to that pain, right? That not enoughness, that shame. So instead, we're intentionally directing our mind towards, right? What can I feel good about? What brings me joy? What are the parts of myself that I really like about me? What are the parts of my life that I really like? What can I feel grateful for? And the more that you turn your mind towards those very different thoughts, what you're actually doing with that inner work is you are intentionally creating emotions like joy, like freedom, like peace, like love, like self compassion, right? So you start to create a very different energy within your body. You feel lighter, you feel freer, right? And what's interesting, because we're all energy, you're made of energy, I'm made of energy, right? Everything is energy. When we are having thoughts that are joy and love and gratitude, our energy vibrates at a different level than the thoughts of shame and guilt and doubt and inadequacy, right? Those thoughts and beliefs vibrate at a different level. And the fascinating thing is that over time, when you intentionally turn yourself and your mind towards very different thoughts, and you ongoingly create this different energy inside of your body, right? What starts to happen in your actual brain is you are now doing the work to rewire different neural connections. Whereas the neural connections before from your past were all about avoiding the shame and the pain and the inadequacy, right? Now we're creating different neural connections that are about finding evidence that continues to strengthen our feelings of feeling okay about ourselves, feeling at peace. And that's how we start to feel like, you know what? I don't need to protect myself from other people's judgments. I don't like being judged. I don't like being criticized. I don't like being rejected. But if that happens, it's not the danger that I thought it was. I can handle it. I can be okay with it because I actually know that I'm whole. I know that I'm already enough, right? And so I don't have to keep defending and protecting myself up against that. If it happens, when it happens, I'll handle it then. And that's how we build confidence, right? And you're on that stage and you can actually say to yourself, you know what? I'm just going to be me. I'm just going to be fully self-expressed. There might be people that don't like what I have to say, and I'm just going to let go. And if that happens, that's about them. That's not about me. And that has us actually showing up in our life from a fundamentally different place. We are able to step outside of our comfort zone. We're able to take risks. We're able to be more fully self-expressed. Ironically, we're able to show up in our more confident selves. And those thoughts, those new thoughts and new beliefs that lead to new emotions, that lead to new choices and behaviors, have our life going in such a vastly different direction that you almost won't recognize yourself and your life over time. And if I can just say, Joanne, without the mind method, I can assure you, I would not have written my book. I would definitely not be a podcast host. I would not have, created a program that now, hundreds of people all over the world are engaged in. I certainly would not be certifying coaches and healers to take the mind method into their
Yeah.
businesses. None of this would have happened. In fact, you and I would not be having this conversation right now because my own automatic mind would have kept me stuck in my own fear, my own doubt, my own inadequacy. Because my never ending message is not only am I not enough, but I'm also unworthy, right? And so until I did my own excavation of
Mm.
that automatic mind, that's the mind that governed my whole life and also governed my relationships with my husband, my children, my relationships with myself, my relationships with my friends, my family. Everything is completely different because of the inner work.
Yeah, beautiful. So, how about I would love to take, use this example that you mentioned because also is part of what I do. I help people launch a podcast. And so often people come to me and say, Joanne, I would love to launch a podcast, but right, who am I to launch a podcast? So there's so many podcasts out there. Who will listen to me? Do I have enough to say? And these are all the excuses, I call them excuses that people gave me as to why they cannot
Yep.
launch a podcast. So it's all about changing the narrative, right? We talk about it, right? The method, how do you change the narrative, the story that you are telling yourself over and over and over again. So let's say just take this example, right? I cannot launch a podcast. Who am I? No one will listen to me.
Yep.
What should they be telling themselves instead?
It's a great question. So I'm going to just start by saying every single thing we do in our life is because of how we want that to make us feel, right? So if you're launching a podcast, let's say, okay, it's important to do the work to first understand why am I actually launching this podcast, right? What is the underlying purpose or reason? Now, our automatic mind, right? If it's our automatic mind that's launching this podcast, it may be because we want to reach millions of people and we want to finally feel the recognition and the value that we've been craving for our whole life. That's from our automatic mind. And if your automatic mind is doing that, you will have a lot of fear and doubt because the goal will be, I need for other people to like what I'm saying and find it valuable. And I need to control what they think of me,
Mm-hmm.
which is impossible, right?
Right.
So when we're trying to control the parts of our life that we can't, like what other people think of us, we're in a lot of anxiety because that's what anxiety is. It's an attempt to control that which we have no control over. So this is where the unhooking from your automatic mind comes into play. When you lean into that mind and you really see, oh, right, I have a lot of attachments to feeling worthy and feeling good enough and feeling valued. And if I can unhook myself from that for a moment and actually consciously look at what might be some other reasons why I want to launch this podcast. And maybe if I just speak to one person and I help that one individual, is that enough? Can I be enough, right? Whether I reach one person or 10 people or 100 people or 100,000 people, if I'm already enough right now, then it doesn't really matter that I'm reaching, hundreds or thousands of people, right? And that's the difference, right? It's not that automatic mind is ever going to go away, because it's not. But if we can see it for what it is, which is nothing more than like automatic machinery in our heads, right? Now we can say, okay, you know what? I'm going to unhook myself from this need for validation. And I'm going to do this podcast to help that one person. And that is how you show up authentically. That's how you show up connected, right? Because you you can now engage in the podcast without trying to control this thing that you have no control over, right? Which is other people's minds and other people's thoughts.
I love that because that's actually that was my mindset when I started out, you know, podcasting.
Yeah.
Like exactly, I was a nobody. Like I didn't have a following. I didn't have any audience. I was just starting out, right? And but I decided to start a podcast. And I remember at the time I was telling myself, yeah, no one's gonna listen to me, but it doesn't matter, right? If just one person, right, listen to
Yes.
me and I make an impact, I help that person change his or her life is enough. And that's
That's
why
right.
I'm doing it, right? If no one listens, I'm doing it for me, right? I'm doing it for myself because I'm enough.
That's right.
So because I'm important, my voice is important. So yeah, I mean that was in mindset, and I'm so glad that you bring it back to me to
Yeah.
make me realize, that was actually how I started. So thank you so much for that. And now, how about how do we? Because maybe for sometimes we need constructive feedback, right? We need constructive criticism, self reflection in order to improve and work on our weaknesses. So, how can we differentiate between constructive self reflection and destructive inner critic voices that's holding us back?
It's a great question. So, you know, I I do the work that I do it with groups of women. And the reason why I do this work, I do it individually too with people, but I find it way more impactful with groups of women because we have to understand that it is all of us that have the same fears, the same doubts, the same inadequacies, okay? Right? If we were to sit, if we had all the time in the world, we would, we live in completely different, parts of the world, right?
Yeah.
But if you and I were to have a conversation, we would be able to connect on where we both feel automatically not enough, right? So when you can embrace that part of yourself instead of trying to shove it down or numb it or overcompensate for it, when you recognize, oh, that's not real, that's not really me, that's just my automatic mind, okay? Now you can have some real honest conversations with yourself. You can see your faults and your flaws and your imperfections, right? I have a lot of parts of myself that are imperfect, right? I have a lot of parts of myself that, like drives my husband crazy. But what I now know, there's nothing wrong with me. I'm not broken. I'm not right. I don't have to fix these parts of myself. And
Mm,
even if there are parts of ourselves that we want to work on and we want to get better at, when we're able to understand, it doesn't mean that we're not good enough. It doesn't mean that we're broken. It doesn't mean that we're any different than anybody else on this planet. Now we've got some self compassion, we've got some grace, we've got some room, and we can explore the changes we want to make and the imperfect parts of ourselves with love and curiosity instead of criticism and blame and feeling like we are flawed.
yeah. How about for people? I know some people in my audience, they are really struggling with low self esteem and self confidence for many years, right?
Yeah.
And
Yes.
so I'm imagining they are listening to this and say, but I've been struggling. This is who I am. Like people call themselves introvert, which is why they cannot talk to people. They cannot go
Yeah.
on dates, right? Because they labeled themselves as such, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's why. And I'm extrovert, which is why I can talk. I can be a podcaster. And always people tell me, yeah, Joanne, because you are an extrovert, you can talk to me. You can become a podcaster. But I'm introvert, right? So again, it's all the labels and identifications. So for people who are, especially for people who have been struggling with self-esteem, low self-worth,
Yes.
self-confidence for years or since they were
Yes.
young, where do they even start?
Yes. So there are parts of our personalities that have been formed by our automatic self. Okay.
Hmm.
Now, I want to say it's not just the parts of our personalities that we don't like, right? So you said there are people that struggle with self-esteem and self-worth, okay? So again, that what that struggle is, if we're going to look at the never-ending message, right? And
Right.
right, it's going to be some version of I'm not enough, right? Or there's something wrong with me, okay? Or I'm unworthy of love. So when they can see that never ending message, now they have a choice, right? Instead of continuing to act in ways that protects them from anybody else seeing that they're not enough or facing rejection or fear, right? Now, when they have some rewired thoughts, they have the
Mm.
opportunity to start making small choices that are in alignment with a bigger vision. You know what? I've had low self-esteem and feeling badly about myself for my whole life, but I have this vision of who I really want to be and what I really want to be doing in my life. And if I can every day visit that in my mind's eye, and I can see myself in my mind's eye living that life, right? And engaging in those behaviors, and I can actually visualize myself doing that. Now I can start to take those small steps, and they're uncomfortable. Those small steps are very uncomfortable, right? But if we can recognize, you know what? I can handle the discomfort. I can be uncomfortable, and I can have that conversation with that stranger,
Mm.
right? Normally I'm an introvert. I keep to myself, but I'm going to go and I'm going to talk to that stranger, and I'm going to introduce myself, or I'm going to, ask them a question. And that starts to get us out of our comfort zone.
Yes.
And what's interesting about our comfort zone is, right, if our comfort zone is here and we just step outside of it just a little bit, we expand our comfort zone.
Mm.
Somebody that is stuck in their automatic mind, they're never stepping outside of their comfort zone because their whole life is hardwired to stay in their comfort zone. If we're making choices that make us a little uncomfortable, our our comfort zone grows, and it grows, and it grows.
Right.
So going back to the being a host of the podcast, right? It's like your confidence, I'm sure, has grown because even though it was a little uncomfortable, and what if no one listens, and how's this going to go, and how's this going to
Right.
be, you did it.
Yeah.
And then you kept doing it, and you kept doing it, and then and then your comfort zone got bigger, and you got more confident, and then you did more things. And again, this is how we change our life. I do just want to say the flip side of this too,
Sure.
because there are some parts of our personalities that seemingly are a good thing, right? Somebody
Mm-hmm.
may be so outgoing and so, overly confident. Now, that might be a good thing, but if it's built from your automatic mind and your automatic self, you might feel I always have to be the life of the party, and I always have to be busy and be constantly interacting with people, and I have to have my schedule so busy because that defines me, right? And I get a lot of praise for that. Everybody says, "Oh my god, you're so enthusiastic, and you're doing all of these things, and you're so busy, and right?" But there's a cost to that, because we can lose ourselves in that as well. We can lose ourselves in being so tightly gripped to, I've got to reach the next level, and I've got to get to the next level of worthiness, that we lose ourselves in overworking, overfunctioning, being overly busy. Some people over exercising. There's all these different ways that these things that people think are so fabulous can actually be toxic.
Yeah, toxic positivity, right? Yeah, because I
Exactly. Yes.
remember for a period of my life, everyone was telling me you're so passionate, right? And I took it like, wow, yeah, I'm passionate, right? Because I was doing so many things, like you said, right? I was trying to achieve goals, get to the next level, just trying to do so many things, and I get all these compliments. I was feeling good about myself, and what happened? I realized that actually I was struggling with high functioning anxiety and depression, right? Because on the outside, I was trying to achieve and prove, and right? But on the inside, I was losing myself, exactly like you said. So yeah.
Yes. And that is why you see so many people that are seemingly at the top of the mountain, right?
Yeah.
But they're miserable,
Yeah.
right? And so there's such a difference when you create, you're still reaching for goals. You're still like,
Mm,
there's nothing wrong with getting to the next level. But when you can do the inner work to already feel whole and fulfilled, that's when you can create without losing yourself, to your point, without being so anxious that I've got to make it to the next level or I've got to prove myself to other
right.
people. When you can really dismantle yourself from that, um, you're creating from a place of peace,
Hmm.
right? And that's where, and I hope that Joanne, you're doing this in your life, because I know I certainly have had to learn this, and I think I've had to learn it the hard way, right? What is front and center in my mind always is my own emotional, psychological, spiritual, physical well-being, right? And so instead of getting caught in that automatic mind that always wants to get to the next, to the next, to the next, I very intentionally design a life of balance. And again, that's not only changed, how I experience myself in my life, but it makes me more available to the people I love.
Mm,
Because when we're so busy and we're so stressed and we're so tense,
right.
right? It's really hard not just to connect with ourselves, but to really connect on a deep level with the people that we love.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much for the reminder. I think I needed to hear that today.
Yeah.
So now tell my people before we're gonna have a final section, which is our rapid fire questions. But before we do that, tell my people, I know you have an assessment where they can take to find out their score, maybe where they are, when it comes to their self-confidence. So
Yeah.
tell my people where they can find you, what are the ways of working with you.
Absolutely. So first off, I offer a free inner critic assessment at innercriticassessment.com. And I'm very proud of this. It is a comprehensive report that shows you there's 5 different inner critics that I've identified. Right. And the inner critic is really what I call your automatic mind. So this report is going to show you what percentage of each of these 5 different inner critics is occupying your mind, and what triggers it, why it's been there all along, and how it impacts not just you in your life, but the other people in your life. So it's a really valuable report. You can also, you can find me, my website is masteringyourmind.com. I have a podcast called Dethroning Your Inner Critic. My book is on Amazon or Audible. It's also called Dethroning Your Inner Critic. And you can find me all over social media.
Yeah. All right, now we're gonna end with our final 5 rapid fire questions, and every question has to be answered in 1 word or 1 sentence maximum.
Got it.
All right, question number 1. What is one thing you wish you knew earlier?
How to love myself.
Beautiful. Second question. If you could relive one day of your life, one day do over, which day would it be?
Oh, one day to do over. Oh, that's a tough one. One day to do over. I would say when my book was first launched, because the day that my book was launched, instead of being in joy and accomplishment, I was in fear and doubt.
Wow. I mean, I know this is a rapid fire, but why? Why was that? What happened?
Because I was in my automatic mind, right? Like I was, that was a lifelong dream of mine. And that automatic mind sucked me into, like, how am I going to promote this, and where's it going to go, and is it good enough? And I, kind of went down that shame spiral once again,
Yeah.
which is What, right? That's why our automatic mind never leaves us, right? It always is right there, right, waiting in the wings to grab us and hijack us.
Well, I feel like it's such a relief to hear that from someone like you who has written a book, has a podcast on all this topic, and yet you still feel that, the self doubt, the fear,
Every
and the
day.
anxiety,
Oh my goodness.
right?
Every day.
Yeah.
Every day.
Yeah.
Yes.
So
Yes.
yeah, thank you so much for
Yep.
sharing that. So being so authentic and vulnerable. The next question is,
Yeah.
if you could master one skill you don't currently have, what would it be?
Oh my goodness. One skill I don't currently have. Oh my gosh. Huh. I think technology, right? I think right. I hire people to do technology because I'm terrible with like understanding how to edit things and
Right.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
So I wish I was a little more technologically savvy.
sure. But of course, the good thing is you can always hire people to do it for you, right?
Exactly.
You don't have to do it
Exactly.
because you can just focus on what you do best, right? Or your passion.
Yep.
The next question is, if you could instantly solve one problem in the world,
Oh,
what would it be?
yeah. Yeah, I would say really what I think everything boils down to is the problem of a fear based mind. I think that all of the uh, anger and hatred and prejudice and divisiveness and polarization and wars in our world, all of it, boils down to a fear based mind. And um, fear is often expressed through anger, right? So everybody is really walking around operating on top of fear, and the way it's all being expressed is anger. And that really
Mhm.
is the basis of the problems in our world.
Yeah, so true.
Mhm.
Right. And on the answer is love, right? It's the opposite of
100%.
fear, which is love.
That's right.
Yeah,
That's it.
beautiful.
That's right.
And the last and final question is, what brings you the greatest joy?
Mm, that's easy. What really brings me the greatest joy is witnessing somebody transform from the inside out and watching their lives and their relationships and their experience of themselves and what's possible completely transform. It is such a profound honor, and I'm in awe every time I see it.
Yeah, and that's why you do what you do, right?
That's right. Of course.
Yeah, across the
That's
world,
right.
and you were
Yep.
empowering coaches and healers to do the same work and help more people. So thank you so much
That's right.
again for coming and for joining us today. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I know you love and enjoy and learn a lot from today's episode. Go follow Joanna. Thank her for coming to our show today. If you have any question, you can always leave a comment below and we'll get back to you. And I'll put all her links, resources that we mentioned in the show note below. So make sure you check it out and take the assessment and share this episode with your friends and family and like and subscribe so you won't miss another episode coming to you every Wednesday. And I will always leave you the same way as I leave you every other episode. Show up, the world needs you, and you need you. Thanks for listening, and I wish you all a joyful and amazing day ahead. Thank you again for tuning into Find Joy Joanne podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, take a screenshot and share it on your IG story and take Find Joy Joanne _podcast so I know you are listening. And leave us a positive review on Apple Podcasts if you haven't already done so. And remember to hit the subscribe button whether you are listening on Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music, or any of your other favorite platforms. If you love what we are doing and want to become one of our sponsors, you can send me a DM to connect. And thanks for being here. I will see you soon in the next episode.